when you look at the time between now and you officially stepping down, what is the top thing on your to-do list?
Well, first of all, if we just step back, it was 9 years ago in September that I was asked to take on the great privilege of leading GSK. And it was 9 years ago in December 2016, that I first started talking to Luke Miles about joining me on the great adventure of transforming the trajectory of the company. And, when you decide to leave a job that you love, you hope for two things. One, that you've put a company in a much stronger position than you found it, and also that you manage to support the smoothest possible transition. And we've all seen examples of where it doesn't look quite like that. I feel really good to have been able to do both. It's a very different company in structure and strategy and momentum and prospects, and most importantly, pipeline. And a lot of that I've built with Lou, but it really does feel like 26, and it did feel the right time to plan for a transition, because we did this period and we continue to upgrade our outlooks from 21 to 26. We're going to over-deliver on that, and it's 26 when, frankly, I believe the CEO who's going to deliver the decade ahead should be given the time and space to define it and its building blocks, and frankly deliver and over-deliver on our long-term outlooks, which I'm really confident Luke will do. So in that sense, the time's right for GSK, it's also right for me, and the most important thing that I can do in the few months ahead is really set him up. And I know he's going to do an outstanding job with a good team, but to set him up for the strongest possible momentum he can. And, then after that, I'll start thinking about what I'm going to do next. And, there's zero chance of any retirement. But it's all about setting him up now.
Well,
oh, by the way, and getting 2 more drugs approved by the end of the year. We've already had 3 important medicines and vaccines approved, and I'm hoping for another really significant multiple myeloma approval, and then by the end of the year, the world's first 6-monthly asthma treatment that reduces the kind of attacks that cause hospitalization by over 70%. So not stopping till the last day.
And so if you look at the horizon for the company, where are you seeing the next big breakthrough, big drug breakthrough?
Well, honestly, in our industry, which has a lot of commentary and a lot of noise, and is very busy and matters in every country in the world, because it's such a huge allocation of government capital, and every individual cares about it too. But the only point of it is to innovate. Remember, we are an industry, one of the few industries that has to reinvent itself every decade because of the IP model. And it's probably been the most important move that I've made, with the team, which was releasing Haleon to set up the balance sheet to be able to invest in innovation. We doubled the spend on R&D, and we now have 15 drugs, medicines and vaccines in our pipeline that should be launching, all material, all with potential peak year sales over £2 billion, should be launching by 2030. And I think 80–90% of them in the next 3 years. And they are in cancer, in respiratory disease, so whether it's asthma or COPD. In HIV, we've long been, really leading pioneers in innovation. We're the first to bring long-acting drugs and solutions to both for prevention and for treatment to HIV. And remember, when I first started work, that was a terrible death sentence, and it's now something we can live with as a chronic disease. And I hope we'll be able to bring a twice a year treatment for HIV. And then, of course, we continue to be committed to a vaccines business. A bit of volatility in that market in one country in the world more recently, but there is no better, this is really serious, there is no better return on investment than stopping disease before it starts. And we shouldn't have short memories, whether it be about what happened in the pandemic just a few years ago, or frankly, it wasn't many decades ago when our children were, dying of measles and, the tremendous burden of polio or whooping cough and these things, and we're excited about the science that's coming through there too.
Yeah, and I also want to ask, as a pharma CEO, but also as a mother of 4, What do you make of some of the rhetoric coming out from the US? For instance, pregnant women should not take Tylenol, as we know is paracetamol here, or that there is no need for vaccines, and how are you dealing with that?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the Tylenol business, but I would say what we seek to do in the US always is engage constructively, grounded in science, and answer questions with total, transparency. I mean, you said as a mum of four, I have given birth twice in New York, once in London and once in Paris, and they all seem to give different recommendations. And the pediatric experience, I mean, this is the thing that people have to understand, that health systems are very different in different countries in the world. And so, history shows that when vaccination rates drop, diseases tend to surge, and then vaccination rates come back up. So I think our job is to make sure we partner with governments and bring facts and science and keep calm. Our vaccines is actually the smallest business at GSK, our biggest business, and frankly, where the majority of our pipeline is coming through is in specialty medicine. So that's in oncology and respiratory and immunology. And so that's why, even though it's been a bit bumpy, I would say, and we're a bit cautious in the near term, we've continually been able to deliver upgrades, whether it's in our annual outlooks or, frankly, our long-term outlooks too, because the pipeline keeps progressing.
And you spoke of constructively engaging in the US. Many of your peers are seeing constructive engagement as lowering drug prices in exchange for a reprieve on tariffs. We saw Pfizer's announcement yesterday. Two questions. One, are you considering something similar? Two, are there any new drugs that you would consider launching in the US and UK at the same price?
Well, first of all, there are multi-dimensional pressures or news flow. In fact, every day you wake up to some new flow for our industry. For the reason I said before, which is every government cares about it, it's a huge allocation of capital. It's, whether it's the NHS here or what's going on in the US, it's always a top topic. And if you look at yesterday's news specifically, I think that's a step forward, and it's progress. And you've seen the markets see that as well, because it's about constructive dialogue between the government and industry. And make no mistake, the US is by far the biggest priority market for our industry, because it's the best country in the world to discover and develop innovation. So far, by the way, there are others that are coming up very fast, but it's also the best place to, for some people to be able to access that innovation early. And if we want to lower the cost of healthcare, we have to continue to encourage innovation, but at a cost that is sustainable for payers, affordable for patients when they're paying to a certain degree out of pocket, but also sustainable for us, because we have to cover the cost of failure in a pipeline, because most things don't work. And absolutely, GSK is engaging constructively. In the state visit just, I can't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we were very present, and I made the announcement of that we were committed to invest $30 billion over the next 5 years in R&D and advanced manufacturing. We're very confident and committed in betting big on the US, and that includes having these kind of constructive dialogues around pricing and access. I'm not going to get ahead of whatever we're going to do next, but I'm confident that, and I'm optimistic that the industry and government can navigate through this together to make sure that we continue to support what matters most, which is bringing down the cost of healthcare by keeping people out of hospital with innovation. And the burden of disease and unmet needs is still so huge. 1 in 2 of us will still be fighting cancer. 1 in 3 of us, not most, people don't think about it yet, but the neurodegeneration is a huge burden. And so we've got to keep working to incent innovation first. And I think we saw some balance in that commentary yesterday too.
And in the UK, other pharmaceutical companies have been quite vocal about the government not doing enough, both on drug pricing,
this is an important
to
point.
encourage investment. What would you like to see the UK government do differently, and what would you like to see to ensure that your presence in the UK stays the way it is?
Well, let me first be clear. We are committed to the UK. It's our home. It's our HQ. It's our listing. We invest heavily here. I mean, we invest more than £1.5 billion a year in R&D. We invest in manufacturing here. And there are many things about this country, whether it's some of the best universities in the world, the eternal promise of the data in the NHS, but we've seen some recent moves on that in terms of translational opportunities and the clinical trials. And I think that is critical. But I mean, a bit to your earlier question specifically, which I didn't answer on the pricing. It is, and I've been really consistent on this, you cannot have life sciences as a leading industry for your country, whether it's here or in Europe, if you don't support a competitive commercial environment, i.e. if you don't recognize the value of innovation. And that is critical. And actually, again, I believe deeply in the value of constructive engagement. And actually, I think, we're seeing some movement with the government, and I think some recognition of the value that our industry can bring. And I think that's the most crucial thing that we need to get fixed to be able to move ahead together and keep this industry as a leading one for the UK. But, the UK is 2% of my sales. The US is 52% of my sales. Mm-hmm. So it's about getting FDI here. But, I'm not being distracted by all the listing questions that everyone gets overexcited about, I think.
That's my next question.
Okay, well, let's move on.
Don't scoop me on the question.
Okay, I didn't know, but, I perhaps could have anticipated it. I won't comment for other people.
But
there are companies that are well valued here, and I just think we should focus on what.
But in terms of liquidity, which is a perma pain point, it seems, we're seeing how the London market is doing. Would it be a consideration to do, for instance, what AstraZeneca did, or to move your listing to the US? Because, as you said, the US is such a big focus market.
As I said, we have no plans for that. We have an ADR there. It doesn't. Our listing location doesn't distract from where we allocate our capital in terms of investments, and there's no plans on that.
Okay. The other, while we are on a roll here, the one thing that we are seeing is national governments protecting or trying to protect key industries, sovereignty, and whether that's in defense or in pharmaceuticals or in tech. In what scenario would it make sense for GSK to combine with another UK pharma company to create a national champion?
Well, GSK has great prospects as we stand today. It's been fantastic to have this chance to lead the organisation through a step change in terms of operational performance and growth, and a real shift in terms of our pipeline prospects. So, I find it a bit hard to imagine all the scenario plans that could possibly be, but there's zero engagement on that kind of question at the moment.
So merger with AstraZeneca is not imminently on the cards.
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that came from, but good.
Yeah. Anytime there's a change in leadership, there is always the question about an activist investor or a merger.
Oh, well, I've had experience of that. And yes? I can tell you that what matters in our industry, and it's what I said in answer to your first question, the only thing that matters is the pipeline of innovation. Because that is what sustains our growth, and that is the point of the industry. That's the value we deliver to society. And it's hard. It takes a long time. Fortunately, technology, and this is that's why healthcare is the ultimate use case for everything to do with AI and tech. And I think it's going to become a more productive industry, and the returns will get better over the decade ahead. But that's what we need to focus on, more than financial engineering. And don't forget, there's nothing more disruptive to an R&D organisation. And I've done global mergers. I know what they take in consumer goods. But in pharma, there is nothing more disruptive to an R&D organisation than, aggressive extraction of synergies.
Yeah. And so,
and it's not like the scale play is a question for many of us.
And, in that vein, before I get to my final question, do you still stand by your move to spin off Haleon instead of take that $50 billion takeover offer?
Of course. I mean, zero doubt on that. When I started, we had a completely locked up balance sheet. Mm-hmm. We had declining investment in R&D. We weren't doing any BD. And, half the pipeline of the industry comes from outside the core research of the main company.
Yeah.
So that was the moment to unlock the capacity of the company to invest in the reason it exists. And frankly, that's why we've delivered a step change in growth and a step change in margins over the last 5 years since we've been an independent company. And quite frankly, as someone who grew up in consumer goods, and I led that consumer business inside GSK, I built the 2 global mergers with the Novartis portfolio and then the Pfizer one, I don't think I had a single question at a quarterly results about the consumer business. And when I took over as CEO, I think a lot of people had that question because of my background about whether I'd want to hold on to it. It was the opposite. It's like the consumer business is never going to be given the capital to invest in its own independent growth because the priority had to be the pipeline. So that's a 100% answer.
And finally, Emma, when you step down, the tally of female CEOs of FTSE 100 companies falls to less than 10%. Mm. When you took over in 2017, did you envisage that this would be the scenario in 2025? And, this is a place where we're trying to be optimistic. So what is your message to the future generation of female leaders, or just leaders?
Well, first of all, you said, what did I envisage this? I've tried never to define my career by my gender. And it's always annoyed me a bit when you get the female CEO tag to everything you do. But at the same time, I deeply recognize, and maybe more so now than when I started.
Less than 10%.
Yeah, I deeply recognize the responsibility we have as role models. And nobody can debate. It's a serious problem when 10% of our leaders, whether it's in business and industry or in government or in the judiciary or in education, it's a serious problem when we are not more appropriately represented. And it's no coincidence that GSK has had a step change in operating performance whilst I have moved to a position where 50% of my direct reports are women, including the CFO, the head of digital and technology, the head of our US business. Remember, I said 52% of the company is a woman. So, and actually we're up to, it's not just about the top table, but it's the next generation coming through. I meet regularly with the top 30 of the company because I believe one of our most important jobs is to drive succession. And half of them are women, and that's really the generation that's going to come through. And what do I say? I say, Ruth, go for CEO. I say to...
Are my bosses in the room?
Yeah, well, why not? I say to women, have big, brave dreams, and don't let other people talk you out of them.
That is
ask for help when you need it. Work hard. Learn from brilliant people who will help you stand up on the difficult days. And you've got one life. Don't waste it.